Welcome back to Reading the Bible Together, everyone. We're here today with Megan, and we're going to read Acts 25 with you. And our three questions are, what's going on? What does it mean? And what are you going to do? But you can go further. That's basically observation, interpretation, and application. You can also ask questions like, what does this teach me about God's character? And what does it teach me about who I am to God? So think about the questions that you want to ask, and as you're journaling, as you're writing out your thoughts, that's really where you put God's word in to practice in your life, and it transforms you. So hopefully you'll get a chance to do that. Acts 25.
Now 3 days after Festus had arrived in the province, he went up to Jerusalem from Caesarea, and the chief priests and the principal men of the Jews laid out their case against Paul. And they argued him, asking as a favor against Paul, and they urged him, asking as a favor against Paul, that he summon him to Jerusalem, because they were planning to ambush to kill him on the way. Festus replied that Paul was being kept at Caesarea and that he himself intended to go there shortly. So said he, "Let the men of authority among you go down with me, and if there is anything wrong about the man, let them bring charges against him." After he stayed among them not more than 8 or 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day he took his seat on the tribunal and ordered Paul to be brought. When he had arrived, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood around him, bringing many and serious charges against him that they could not prove. Paul argued in his defense, "Neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense." But Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor, said to Paul, "Do you wish to go up to Jerusalem and there be tried on these charges before me?" But Paul said, "I am standing before Caesar's tribunal, where I ought to be tried. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you yourself know very well. If then I am a wrongdoer and have committed anything for which I deserve to die, I do not seek to escape death. But if there is nothing to their charges against me, no one can give me up to them. I appeal to Caesar." Then Festus, when he had conferred with his council, answered, "To Caesar you have appealed, to Caesar you shall go."
A few days later, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to pay their respects to Festus. Since they were spending many days there, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. He said, "There is a man here whom Felix left as a prisoner. When I went to Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews brought charges against him and asked that he be condemned. I told them that it is not the Roman custom to hand over anyone before they have faced their accusers and have had an opportunity to defend themselves against the charges. When they came here with me, I did not delay the case, but convened the court the next day and ordered the man to be brought in. When his accusers got up to speak, they did not charge him with any of the crimes I had expected. Instead, they had some points of dispute with him about their own religion and about a dead man named Jesus who Paul claimed was alive. I was at a loss how to investigate such matters, so I asked if he would be willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial there on these charges. But when Paul made his appeal to be held over to the emperor's decision, I ordered him held until I could send him to Caesar." Then Agrippa said to Festus, "I would like to hear this man myself." He replied, "Tomorrow you will hear him." The next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp and entered the audience room with the high-ranking military officers and the prominent men of the city. At the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. Festus said, "King Agrippa and all who are present with us, you see this man. The whole Jewish community has petitioned me about him in Jerusalem and here in Caesarea, shouting that he ought to not live any longer. I found he had done nothing deserving death, but because he made his appeal to the emperor, I decided to send him to Rome. But I have nothing definite to write to His Majesty about him. Therefore I brought him before all of you, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that as a result of this investigation, I may have something to write. For I think it is unreasonable to send a prisoner on to Rome without specifying the charges against him." All right. Do Do you want to start out, Megan?
Sure.
What do you see? What
well,
stands
my
out?
first funny one when I read this was, whatever happened to those 40 people that went on the hunger strike until Paul was killed? Were they still on the hunger strike?
funny
Did they die? Did they give up? You never know. But I thought that was funny to think
It's left
about.
for us to.
Yes.
Yeah. Did they go home?
Oh, right.
You know, just-
I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but in all seriousness, we're moving around a lot, places and people, and I am not like a historian type person. I don't remember facts. I have a daughter that can like lay stuff out. She remembers. So I did the Bible recap. Tara-Leigh Cobble actually has a really good like map resource to show Paul's journey.
went, yeah.
So if you want to look that up to see for yourself. And then also, Agrippa and Bernice are brought up. I didn't know who they were. Bernice, I believe, is actually Drusilla's sister, and Agrippa and Bernice are brother and sister, even though it looks like they're married, they're not.
There's a lot of family things going on
Family,
here.
interesting. So if you ever want to dig down that rabbit hole, but I was just trying to kind of center myself into where are we and what's happening. But one thing I did circle was the statement in mine anyway, in my version 19, where it says about a certain Jesus. They're bringing it up like they're not aware of really who Jesus is.
Yeah.
Even though Paul is giving this testimony over and over and over again, there are people who still have no clue. And that's just interesting in this little part to me that, there are high-ranking people that are well aware of a lot of things going on, and they still really don't know who Jesus is. They've just kind of heard of him, and they just don't know about his earthly life and ministry. So that was interesting.
That's
to
a
me.
very, very good point. And how many times do we assume everybody knows who Jesus is, but actually maybe they've heard a little bit about him, but they haven't taken long enough to consider who he is. So to be able to open up those conversations with the people around us is so great. Yeah, the back and forth, the family relationships, the fact that Paul's nephew, where is he right now,
Right.
too? Like there's people that care about Paul, so his friends are allowed to take care of him in prison. That's significant because in a Roman prison, you don't get taken care of by the Romans.
Right.
It is not like our prison. So they would have to bring him food and things like that. And often he's exposed to the elements. This isn't a great situation. So when we later find out he goes to house arrest, that's a much better situation than being in the prison and what he was going through here. And so yeah, I think the concepts of you have appealed to Caesar and to Caesar you will go. Again, God's providence here, because we know he's already been told he'll go to Rome and testify, so we know that he will be headed back. And the Romans and the Jews do not care for one another, but you see this respect and the honor before they start speaking, and the deference to the Romans that are the ruling class, right? And just the order that the Romans bring, that there has to be charges, there has to be. So that actually brings protection to Paul, which is interesting historically. And Paul is just continuing to bring everything back to, I've done nothing wrong except for talk about Jesus. And he's saying he's innocent.
Standing by it.
Yeah. And so I'm curious to see, I've already read it, but what happens in Acts 26, right?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do having
This
read
week?
Acts 25?
Well, to bounce off kind of what you said before too, not making assumptions about what people know about Jesus. I think, especially when you are, in a Christian church and a Christian family, you kind of become a little bit blinded to the fact that there are a lot of people who've heard the name, or they're like, their thoughts that come up when they think about it aren't positive. And so it's not like, oh yes, I want to get to know that person Jesus that you're talking about. So it's kind of bringing me back to wanting to ask people, kind of get their story.
Yeah.
what's your story? Have you ever been to church? Maybe not that right away, but just something to get their history with Jesus, whether or not they have one or not, and not assuming that, oh, you kind of already have this baseline knowledge.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a blind spot, I think, sometimes with us as long-term Christians.
Yeah, it's hard to break into we certainly don't want to be awkward, but it's like I would rather be awkward than miss out on those conversations. And so sometimes I'll even start it like, hey, tell me something about you that nobody else knows. And because I just want to get to know you better, if it's somebody I'm just getting to know. And I'll do the same. I'll tell you. And when I tell my story, maybe I tell a little more of my story, so then people will feel like they can tell a little more of their story. And each time because man, going through life not together, that's just sad. That's just sad. And also it's with each other. Christians too. I need to be encouraged by Megan, and by all of you. When I hear your testimony, man, it's just like a shot in the arm some days to hear all the things that God's doing in your life. And yes, even to hear what the enemy's doing, but that you still believe, right? That you still trust in Jesus, and that is the body of Christ encouraging one another and being there for each other.
Well, and not to sit in your shame when you fall short.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when people don't want to talk about it, it's because they feel shame or guilt surrounding it. And we all sin and fall short. And so we're all in a level playing field. So just because I've been doing this walk longer than you doesn't make me better or more of a professional Christian. And so not letting that be a barrier.
Absolutely. Our worth is not tied up in what we do or don't do. Our worth is found in Jesus, that he loves us and was willing to die for us. So it's good news. All right, go ahead and write your comments and send your emails. We'd love to hear about what Acts 25 means to you too. And we'll see you back tomorrow for Acts 26.